Meet Mr. John Corcoran, who could neither read nor write, but managed to graduate from college and teach school for 18 years. And also, Miss Pat Lindamood, who finally helped to teach John how to read. Thank you so much for being here. John, this is one of those amazing stories. How could you graduate from college and then teach school and not be able to read?
It's a pretty hard story to explain, and I think in trying to explain it, I'd have to use the analogy that like a drowning man in the middle of the ocean, he swims to shore with cramps in his leg. And it's only now that I have to try to explain the story. I have to explain it to myself. Not knowing how to read in the United States is a form of child neglect and child abuse. So I have been going through a process of healing from the emotional trauma of being an illiterate in America. How did I do it? Ask me a question.
Well, I mean, do you have a tremendous sense of memory? To be able to teach classes to students and you yourself can't read, that's beyond comprehension.
I think why the literate world, as I define the other world, thinks that it's so hard to understand is because I shatter the myth of illiteracy in America. People in America think that we are dumb, and it is our fault that we did not learn how to read or something that was wrong with us. But the truth is, we just were not taught properly. 25% of the population learns how to read like birds learn to fly, and another 50% learns how to read like most of the people in here, teachers and so on. And there's a 25% of our population that has difficulty learning how to read. And I'm one of those persons. And I was put in the dumb row in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. Today, we don't have the dumb rows. We have special ed and labels like learning disability.
Or at risk and all those other labels.
Correct.
But now, you had to grade tests for students. You had to review reports. How did you get around that and then keep your faculty from knowing that you yourself couldn't read?
One of the things, too, I have just a few minutes to explain 45 years of a secret. And to use an analogy of being like a Jew in Nazi Germany, in terms of hiding my secret and deceiving the literate world out there. And one of the things I did in terms of teaching, I taught students the way I learned. And the way I learned was seeing and hearing and doing. That's the way we did things in class. We had oral participation, and we did not have necessarily the traditional written paperwork.
And then, Pat, you came and got involved in the story. How?
I saw John's story printed in the newspaper, read about it, and when I read that with 13 months of effort, that with a volunteer tutor, that he had developed some ability to read, I knew that there was still a factor in his situation that had not yet been addressed. And I knew that because as a speech pathologist, I have some 25 years of experience and research in dealing with a primary factor involved in dyslexia.
So you worked with John then from that point on. We're going to look at some of your techniques a little later, but you just contacted John and decided to start working with him?
Yes, I called him and told him that I thought there was a factor that could still be operating that might be keeping him from reaching his full potential. And I asked if he would be interested in being checked to see whether that factor was in fact in his situation.
She asked me if she could have an hour of my time, and that hour lasted 3 hours, and she showed me some things that I intuitively thought were going to open some more doors for me in terms of the written word.
But now, in each one of the cases of the helpers up here, out of the clear blue, you just decided to help someone else. You saw a story, you heard a story, you looked at a story, you met someone. Why? Why? Sandy, why?
Well, I wanted to say something about your story. When I model and I travel around the world, whether I'm in Hong Kong or Paris or Milan, wherever I am, and they're speaking a different language and I'm English, and I'm the foreign one and I don't understand them, I would think it would be the same feeling of being illiterate in our country, not understanding, not being able to relate to people. And I just think it's so wonderful that, you know, you took the time to help him out. Why? I asked myself a few times, why do I keep giving him money? I'm no Rockefeller myself. But I just saw somebody who needed help. I mean, I see homeless people all the time, and if I can help them, I will. Sometimes if I don't have it, I won't give it to them because you can't give it to everybody. I'd go broke and be on the street myself. But it's just, I think time after time, seeing it over and over, Gary just was real special.
Rick, why?
Well, my reason was I've lost two kids. One child, I lost my son to brain cancer. I lost a daughter to crib death. I lost my dog. And I was losing so much that I figured I just had to get in control. I just took control and tried to save a life instead of having everything taken away from me.
Okay, my question is for the first couple. Gary, what are you doing now that you're off the streets now?
Well, first things first. I like to thank God. God is the key in my life today that has opened the doors for opportunity. I've always believed in God, but I never really had true faith, you know. That's the main thing. This is responsible for everybody up here. God works in mysterious ways. It's not mysterious to him, it's mysterious to us.
But what are you doing right now?
Today, easy does it, one day at a time. I'm at home with my mother. I'm working, and I stay away from people, places, and things. I go to church. I'm not an angel, but I'm trying to do the right thing one day at a time. I try to be honest. I try to be real.
My question is for the two that had the kidney transplant.
Rick and Frank.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This has got to be an expensive operation. Who footed the bill for it?
Okay, I worked for Delta Airlines for a long time, and they took care of everything. They did everything.
For both of you?
For both of us.
Medicare and Delta Airlines.
Well, what makes a good Samaritan go above and beyond the call? We'll find out when we return. We're talking about those people who go above and beyond the call of duty, if you will, as citizens to help other people. And you had a question.
Yeah, I have a question for Sandy. Were you ever scared knowing that he knows where you live and everything?
Sometimes I questioned it. I got in trouble for having him in my building, and people yelled at me. They say, don't you know some of the homeless can be crazy? And I heard one guy killed this one girl because she was the only one he can relate to. Question sometimes, but I don't know, I took that chance.
Now, Rick, understand it. Number one, you lost some income from this, and this wasn't a cakewalk. You didn't just walk in and say, oh, here's my kidney, you can have it, and everybody accepted that. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I was making approximately $650 a week at my job as an aerospace machine operator, and I've lost half pay, and I'm still on disability. I went from $650 to $300 a week.
But they also, during the testing period, when you walked into the doctor and said, I'd like to give this man a kidney, there were some odd things that took place there. Why don't you tell us about that?
Everybody was fighting it. I've lost friends over it because they thought I should be more family-oriented and save my kidneys for my daughters, and the doctors were against it, and we went through 8 months of psychological counseling because they thought I was being paid to give him a kidney.
And Frank, you told me something a little earlier about the fact that Rick wouldn't even tell you about this.
Well, you know what? While he was going through all of this, he never let me know anything about it because I was sick. And he got on my nerves the way he watched over me all the time, you know. And he always said, look, I want you to be healthy when you take my kidney so nothing will happen to it, you know. And I didn't know the problems he was having at home with his wife, with his father, with everybody, because he did not want to worry me.
Yes, my question goes to the last couple. How did you manage to keep your grade point average all through school while you went through without other people knowing?
Well,
There's about 23 million people in our society that can't read past the 4th grade level now. Last year we graduated 1 million people from our high schools that can't read past the 8th grade level. There's another 1 million people that dropped out of high school last year that we can assume that didn't read. This is my story, and the fact is that we didn't slip through the crack. The system has been passing illiterate people through the system for over 40 years, and it's just catching up with society now. And I also cheated.
As often as you could, right?
My question's for the donor. I was wondering what made you go to the fishing pier. Did you hear voices, or was it what made you go find him on the fishing pier? Did you fish?
I didn't, at the time I started going, no, I didn't fish. I just had this compulsion, this urge. I lived a mile from the pier, and I just walked at least three times a day to the pier and stood there on the end of the pier wondering, why am I here? Until I met Frank. And then after I met Frank, I started going every time Frank was there.
Yes, I got a question for the lady right there,
Sandy.
gentleman, and the
Well, how about one question at a time? Start with one and we'll see how many more I'll give you.
Okay, do you do this because you feel gratified, because you feel happier because of yourself that you do something like this? Or you do it because you want to help someone, you really care? I mean, why do you really do this? Really? Do you really care?
No, I really do. I really did care. I knew the money I'd never get back. I knew the time I did it just because I had no, I knew I'd never get anything back.
How about Pat? Yeah. Pat, for Pat, how come you did it, Pat?
I did it because I feel that everyone should have a chance for his full potential to be available to him. And I saw that when John had put that much effort in, that I just felt he should have one more step in the process.
I have a question for the gentleman who is a teacher. You seem like such an intelligent person. Why didn't you seek help earlier? There are literacy associations in almost every city of this country, and they could have helped you, and somebody else could have helped you.
No, they have not helped us. There are millions of us out there right now, and we have not been taught how to read and write or spell. And one of the problems is that we get the blame and we carry the shame, and we have been abused, and it is not our fault that we did not learn how to read. We were not taught how to read, and this society must quit blaming us and denying the fact that we can't read.
For the two gentlemen with the kidney, I'd just like to know, with all of the problems and all of the controversy you had when you made the decision, was there any time from the time of your decision to the time of your surgery that you thought of changing your mind?
No. I never changed my mind. I never even thought of changing my mind. The only negative thought I had about it is I was afraid when I walked in the hospital room. Here I was, I walked in the room, I walked over to the window, I was looking at the Hollywood sign at St. Vincent's Medical Center out the window, and I said, what the hell am I doing here?
But wait, now that you've done it.
Now that I've done it.
Do you want it back?
No, I'd do it again tomorrow.
My comment is towards the third couple there.
John and Pat.
John and Pat, right. As far as you're not being taught to read, what does that have to say about our teaching, people that are, out there teaching
our
us?
Teachers
right,
and
right. I mean,
our schools.
I mean, if they're not teaching right, what are they doing teaching?
I think we've been asking that question ever since someone said he was going to be the education secretary. We'll give you a chance to answer that as soon as we come back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about people getting that second chance on life. We'll be back in just a second.
I have a question for John. I know one of the major responsibilities for a teacher is to do lesson plans and mark papers and give tests and fill out a lot of forms in the school. How could you accomplish this task if you weren't able to read for 8 years?
For 16 years.
You have to, well, I couldn't read for 45 years. I didn't learn how to read until I was 48 years old. Quickly, I must respond to the question that the host said I could respond to.
Go right ahead.
It's important for us not to bash or batter teachers. They've had enough. They need the same kind of consideration new readers need. Understanding. We have a body of new knowledge now, and we must be open to that. And the answer to your question is you have to think about me as a person who, like a blind man, who compensated and overcompensated in many cases. I had students write for me. I had students read the bulletins for me. I always could orchestrate or manipulate a literate person to read for me or write for me. I dated a valedictorian in high school. I dated college prep girls. I listened to and I learned. I didn't say I wasn't intelligent. I said I was illiterate. And I think that you have to perceive it that way. You have to see it that way.
What subject did you teach?
I taught social studies for one.
This is for the teacher.
I'm not a teacher now, by the way. I'm a builder and developer.
Have there been any repercussions from parents finding out that you have been teaching their children and you haven't been able to read yourself?
Well, one of the things is that I was an excellent teacher. I was a good teacher. I had good evaluations. I got to admit and do not advocate, illiterate teachers. I do not do that. But what I do ask is that we take a look at other ways of learning, the multi-senses, and I think that's the question that I raise. I raise questions with shattering the myth about intelligence. How do people learn, and how do people learn to read? And Pat Lindamood has a method and some valuable information that the world needs to have
access to.
Yes.
You got it.
John, this is for you. I have a son that has a learning disability. Up until he was
Those are teaching disabilities.
Well, he's also dyslexic and other problems as well. Until he was in the 4th grade and a brilliant teacher noticed it, we did not know. Now you're not teaching. Why? You know the struggle that these kids go through. Why not give them something? Take that knowledge that you've learned the hard way and put it to use for us that need your help so desperately.
I'm teaching right here today. Right here I'm teaching. This is my classroom. Thank you.
I would like to commend Sandy and the gentleman who's a donor, Rick, in today's society for really going out of your way and loving the one you want to love, and also really donating a kidney.
Which is still loving.
Which is still loving. It's just unbelievable.
Oh, this is for Rick. Rick, did you feel you got all that controversy and grief because Frank is a black man? Do you feel if he had been white, your wife would have given you all that grief and everything, and your friends, and if he wasn't black?
Yeah, I feel that all the controversy was because he was black.
And there was a considerable amount of that kind of controversy. I mean, you had to go in and the doctors asked you several times, were you getting paid, and the why and the why and the why and the why. And the two of you even had to lie about how long you knew each other. Is that
We had
correct?
to make up a story.
When we went in.
Yeah, we had to make up a story the first time we went and saw the doctor that we've known each other for 5 years. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done the surgery, and he said that himself.
Well, I have a question for John. First of all, I don't believe that you did not go to college because you couldn't pass an SAT exam.
I didn't.
You did go to college. You graduated.
You couldn't pass an ACT exam, and if you cheated, you had to read somebody's paper. Did you take written exams? Can you read past the 3rd grade level? I don't believe you whatsoever. It's not possible. And now you're a builder?
Wait. Well, you may say that. Hold on a second, John. I'll answer that too, because I'll tell you what's up. This gentleman and I do research the people. Our people research these people. John's story is true. He did not know how to read, and he has done what he has done. And it's all about that whole fallacy. For you to ask that question, kind of to me says, well, I've got a scam up here on my stage, and I don't have a scam up here on stage. The guy could not read until he got together.
As I went to college, you went to college.
That's right.
I know how difficult it is. I know how difficult just a SAT exam is. If you can't read, you can't pass. Did you get over 600 on English? Did you get under 300?
I never took
What
that
college did you
exam.
graduate from? You never told us.
Okay, let's let him answer some questions.
I'll answer that question, but Pat may be able to say something about the validity. I'll answer the question, sir. I got through college. I got a degree.
He's going to answer that question.
Where did you go to college?
Michigan State University.
That just happens to be the university I went to.
But John, there are some important questions that he's asked. One of them is, how did you pass an SAT? How did you get into that college without being able to take exams?
I'm 53 years old. I did not take one. I went on an athletic scholarship. I never took an entry exam. The world is different.
And even through high school, you were an athlete, so you got away with some extra things there.
I don't think that's fair either. I think that if I were the only person in America that got through high school that couldn't read, I'd understand that. Or people that have gone through college. I was creative. I cheated.
Okay, my question is to you. How did you grade your papers and stuff, and what kind of grades did you give your students, or did you just pass them on like you got passed?
No, I did not. I didn't grade papers. I had an oral participation, and they participated orally.
Okay, we'll be back right after this. We've been talking about real good Samaritans, and Pat, you used a technique with John to help him discover some of the other parts that were wrong in his learning and his development. Just describe that and tell us how that works.
I did a diagnostic test with John to determine whether he could judge how many sounds there are in words and what they are in their order. And the procedure for that uses some colored blocks. For example, if I were to start out and this were to be and if I wanted to change to gom, if John can judge that I've added a sound in front of this one and that there are now 3 sounds in that syllable, he has to add another colored block right here. And when I tested him, when I said sounds in an isolated manner, such as g, b, he could judge that there were 3 different sounds. But when those same sounds came together in a syllable, then he could not judge. So, for example, when he was supposed to add the block at the beginning, he took away a block instead. And
what did he test out at when you first tested him?
In his word attack skills, which means his ability to read nonsense words where he cannot use anything he has memorized, he tested at a 2.3 grade level on that.
And you have now brought him up to a higher grade level, is that correct?
I would say John has brought himself up. I taught him how to discover the feeling of mouth movements that produces the sounds in words. And now he scores at a 12.3 grade level on word attack skills.
I think so much emphasis has been placed on winning at any cost in this society that the colleges are perpetuating the illiteracy with the sports programs. It's obvious quite a few athletes can't read and they're in college.
Okay, do you have a question, though?
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, I just wanted to make a comment that the colleges are doing it too, for money.
There's 70 million people that can't read, and they weren't all athletes.
Well, now, again, though, the issue is not college, the issue is not high school, not the education system. It's the fact that people like the 3 of you stepped up to the line to help someone else when they needed help. And in your case, Rick, it takes a lot. I've met people in the last 10 years of my life, and I don't know, even some of my closest friends, if I would say, take this kidney, and I really think you should be applauded for doing that. And Sandy, Again, homeless people, I see them. They're out here in L.A., every city that I travel to, Chicago, New York. I see them all the time. What was so special about Gary that made you stop?
Well, when we were sitting there and we were talking, I knew Gary was very smart. He sings rap songs and he writes lyrics to rap music. And he sang one to me about the homeless. And the words he used, I can tell he had really been there. He was really on the street. He was really homeless. He had been through hell. And the words in this song, he's an intelligent man. And I said, he's not a bum. He's a real person.
Well, I'll tell you what, when we come back, let's hear Gary's rap. We'll be back right after this. Pat, what do you say?
Value another person in his right to be the best he can be.
You know,